Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of I Never Knew But My Dog Did podcast. I am Maureen Scanlon, your hostess with the mostest. And I don't know why I'm singing everything today, but it just, my heart is so light with my next beautiful guest. Um, I am so excited. Today, I'm so excited. First of all, we are doing things in honor of Barbie and the power of being women. And I am just so thrilled to have my next guest because she represents everything to me that we should be and that we aim to be in this life, and it is just do you, just be you, and let's include everybody in allowing everybody to be accepted, included, and allowed to do anything that they want to do. So I'm going to tell you her story. So my next guest was born in Detroit. Currently, she is finding time to be an author, podcaster, advocate. And as I aim to be, I aspire like her to be a TEDx speaker. She's living a confident, visible, and successful male to female cross-dressing life. Through a lifetime of experience and research, she's come to understand the many reasons men cross-dress, the struggles and fears they face, and the weight of the cross-dressing labels they accept but may not truly understand. And there was so much in her bio that I wanted to read a whole bunch of it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this next part, but then we're going to talk to her and let her read some of that and discuss some of that. But she has an award-winning, E-Lit award-winning Living with Cross-Dressing book series, and it was written to demystify and destigmatize the dual gender experience for both cross-dressing men and their loved ones, spouses, and partners. She co-hosts the weekly The Fox and the Phoenix podcast, reinforcing the same positive and inclusive message of gender identity and expression. Whenever possible, she leads conference workshops and has given two, not one, but two TEDx talks, plus emceeing a third. Her website, www.livingwithcrossdressing.com, is a repository of information to allow users to realize there is good information out there for consumption and contemplation. Oh my goodness, my new bestie. Hello,
Hey,
Savannah.
hello, Maureen. That was amazing. That was the best intro ever. And we are living on top of this like love bubble because I'm like so energized to be here with you today.
Savannah's in our love bubble. Woo, woo. That's my new thing. This podcast and everything that we are is a love bubble today. So here on I Never Knew, of course, we talk about our knee story, which is the idea behind my podcast is the overcoming and the struggle and that motivation for others to keep pushing on through things that they've been through. So we always start off with our knee story. So tell us, Savannah, how it came to be that you learned how you wanted to cross dress and you had this really dual gender identification, and the struggles that you've been through with that.
Well, let's go backwards because if I go forwards, it'll be 7 hours of conversation. But I mean, I'm 50 something. Sorry, excuse me. And it's only been within the last 6 years that I fully embraced Savannah. But I've been living with Savannah since I was 6 years old. So imagine pre-internet, imagine fetishistic behind the counter tabloid. Think of how society deems us. Think about the um, like 70s, 80s of the Tootsies and the Bosom Buddies and the Stoutfires and all those things that didn't really make sense to me as a man who wants to dress as a woman. So even growing up, even though we said, oh, there was plenty of people and there's celebrities and there's stories, no, we were always considered either doing it for deceit, like I need to see my children, so I'll be the nanny. I need a job on a soap opera, so I'll dress as a woman. Like all these things were never anything that, like, yeah, that makes sense to me. That sounds correct to my heart. So I grew up conservative Midwest. Luckily, not very religious. I'll give you that. That was actually a plus and a bonus. But I spent years. It took my mid-20s and moving to New York to realize, like, oh my God, there's two men holding hands. Oh my God, there's a beautiful drag queen. Oh my God, there's like life outside, cis normative, cis heteronormative. So I finally said in my 20s, I'm like, I am a transvestite. That's what I said in my head. And then I was like, ew, I don't like that word. So I decided I hated it. I thought it took me that long to accept it because it was really kind of mired in just goopy stigma and taboo. And I'm like, all right, well, I will accept it because it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I will accept it. I don't wanna, but I will. And then I'm like, luckily, PC, oh, well, cross dressers a little softer, it's not stigmatized. So I said, ooh, let me get rid of that word and go to the other word.
Mhm.
And then spent from my mid 20s to now in a roller coaster of self discovery, pleasing people, other people's beliefs, to put myself back in the closet or asserting myself and thinking that I'm a terrible person for like wanting to do for me versus somebody else and their comfort level. It has been, again, 25 years of self assessment. It's been deep diving, looking at my self concept, and like not even knowing what any of these words meant, but just doing the work. And then I came from New York, from Detroit to New York for 25 years, and then right down to South Carolina, y'all. I'm in South Carolina, y'all. And that was when the TED Talks happened. That's when I made a podcast with a co-host. That's when I started to be way more visible in daylight, not under the cover of darkness, going to private events and clubs, and finding like myself as a real, I don't want to say a real person because I'm a real person no matter how I present, but having a full life experience as Savannah versus just a man in a dress.
Oh my gosh, all of that. And you really just opened my eyes because we are similar in age. We're 50. And seriously, like my parents, come from Wisconsin, that Midwest mentality and very black and white thinking. We also did not have religion in my home, but they had definite strong belief systems about gay and just
Mhm.
you knew where they stood on everything, and they wanted you to stand in that same place, and it never felt right to me. It never did. And I knew, just like you said, you knew since you were 6 years old. I knew when I was 6 years old, like I was different because I didn't see things the way that they saw it. And when you said that about Tootsie and Bosom Buddies and Mrs. Doubtfire, that is genius that you say that, because it was like you can only cross dress if you're doing it for this reason. It's something that you're trying to fool someone, or it's
Yeah.
comedic. It's comedic. And you're right, transvestite was the word, and it felt prostitution like. It
Mhm.
felt dirty. And of course, we're coming out of the 60s into the 70s and 80s where in some places it was illegal,
Yeah.
where you couldn't be gay. And you had the gay nightclubs that it was, almost like speakeasies. So I can completely, I can't say that I feel what you went through, but I can definitely empathize and understand the struggle for you. Now, I love that you said you went from New York, where I feel they're so much more forward in their
Mhm.
acceptance of people. It is absolutely one of my most favorite places. My daughter and I went together on a mom daughter trip, and we were actually on Good Morning America together.
Oh.
And we went to theater, and we're walking down the street, and we just met so many fantastic people. So it must have been culture shock, you going to New York and then leaving New York. So tell us both how hard both of those experiences were.
Well, I mean, I was young. I was in my mid 20s when I moved, and the move was strictly mercenary in terms of needing a job. And the Midwest wasn't really hiring where I had any skill. So my wife's brother had a place, and we started putting in our resumes and moved there. So the move was not because I was looking for something more liberal. The move was strictly because I was trying to survive and make some money. So it wasn't until settling in and going being invited downtown to Chelsea and Soho and going to the bars and clubs there and seeing people just walking around, just as if it's life. And that to me was culture shock. I'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. Those people are just walking around. Aren't they afraid of what may happen to them? And I didn't understand. I went to Lucky Chang's in '96, and that had just opened like a couple years prior, where celebrities were going, and it's all drag performed and drag hosted, and a bartender's drag. And I went there, and it was like my mind was blown that this was a place that normal people went to and were in love with everybody who's performing and doing lip syncing and dancing and serving you and hosting. I had never seen people like celebrate it in that way. So to see gender diversity and presentation, alternative presentation, not tiered biology being shown on display was, I didn't know what to do with it, but it was the first step of being like, if they can do it, then then it's good, okay for me to say it's okay for me.
Yes, I feel like it
Yeah,
was your Oz. It was like the yellow brick road took you to this place where it was like, wait a minute, they're not afraid,
yeah,
and that is empowering because that's just how we're created as humans. Is we do kind of have a mob mentality where it's like, inside we have things, needs, desires, and wants, but we're so scared sometimes to show that. And then when you do see others doing it, you're like, oh, cool, I can do that too. So
yeah.
I just love that. Is there in this, I think in my mind, and I hope listeners, I'm gonna ask all the questions you want to know. Um, I feel like RuPaul opened doors. I feel like
Mhm.
she made it she made it very cool to cross dress and to do drag. And I mean, obviously now I just love it. And I don't love it, I love the showmanship of it, I love, but what I love is the freedom and the personalities,
Mhm.
such as yourself, that you come out, it's almost like you shed this shell or this skin, and then there you are. It's like I think of that big light shining when you can do that. Is there anyone else, or do you agree with me that RuPaul was maybe someone that really paved the way to be able to be more open and accepting to this?
I think that the Stonewall riots in the '60s was definitely like the touchstone of
Mhm.
change when it came to people with gender diversity before there was a language for it. But yes, you're right. RuPaul has been a New York icon for pride, for motivation, for putting out albums as RuPaul, being in movies such as Tu Wong Fu. And then,
Mhm.
like you said, in recent years with Drag Race, she's made it mainstream. It's one thing to be acknowledgeable, like, oh, I know the name RuPaul, like, but I don't really watch it. Now you hear people of all walks of life watching Drag Race for the personality, for the performance, for the showmanship or showwomanship for that matter. So yeah, absolutely. Is she the only icon? No, but she's definitely probably the name in drag that everybody knows. Or, you may know a couple others, but she's definitely could be predominant in that.
Yeah.
Ironically, I am not a drag queen because I can't sing nor dance nor lip sync.
Okay.
So for me, this is not performative. This
Okay.
is just an expression I need to express.
Mm.
So in that way, there is a difference between, RuPaul Charles, does things as both in their male or female guys in entertainment, and they're very comfortable doing both. But for me, this is not performative, and it's not something I put on to be a showman or showwoman.
Yeah.
It's how I show up in life in order to have a lovely conversation with you, of course. And just for everybody to know, we tried this a couple weeks ago, and I wasn't prepared to be on air, and I was not dressed as Savannah, and I was not okay with being on air, even though I was going to grind it and say, yeah, okay, let's do it. But yeah,
And
this is how
what did I say? What did I say?
you
No.
you said. Basically in your head, you're like, I see your face and the fear, and then you said out loud, it's like, let's do this when you're more comfortable and feeling like you're centered in who you are.
Oh my gosh, yes. There was no way, listeners, and I hope you guys are going to watch this on YouTube, because it's really, you need to really see it on YouTube and to see how beautiful she is,
Oh,
and just how full of light she is. And there was no way when I saw you. and you saying, "Oh, I'll try." There is no way I would ever allow you to be anything but the most comfortable on this podcast and in your skin and presenting yourself as my beautiful Savannah.
Oh,
But that's a really great distinction that you just made. So there's cross dressing and there's drag queens. And so the drag queens are more entertainment
mhm.
focused. And then the cross dressing is our expression of our female energy and our female side that we embrace.
Yes.
Does that
Yes,
sound?
and yes, absolutely. And you could say being a drag queen uses cross-dressing
Mhm,
because
mhm,
these are men, mostly men. Not all drag queens are men,
mhm.
but mostly men who use cross-dressing to find that performative identity that they go up on stage as. For me, it is not that. It's just me living in the world. And to your point, yes, cross dressing is an action in order to, like you said, embody and present our feminine energy to whatever degree that is and whatever intensity that is. So
Yes.
for me, you would never see me walking around like Billy Porter, like, with a beard and makeup and a gown under a carpet. You're always going to see either all Savannah or all Chuck.
Oh,
So
la,
that's
la, la.
why last time we did this, I thought it would be a disservice as well to show up and have this conversation and not be embodying my energy the way I should.
100%. I'm 100 million%. I just love that. Now, here's the interesting thing. So, and I think I love that we're embracing more that men can have female energy. And I think um I had interviewed a guest on the podcast early on when I started it, and he's talking about like highly sensitive men and how it's okay to be softer, to be embracing emotion. And it really it's something, especially me being married to an engineer. I've worked with him for the last 7 years of saying it's okay to have emotion because he didn't really have that. And now we watch movies and he's got tears streaming down his face, and I see him looking over to see if I'm crying, and I'm not crying, and I've got a very strong male energy. So
Right.
it's very interesting. And then my grandson, I call him a squish because he's so in tune with his female side. In fact, a lot of kids at school ask if he's gay. They do, and he laughs it off. He isn't. He doesn't feel that way, but he is so in tune and so emotionally intelligent that I love that he's embracing it. And you're gonna love this. You're gonna love that. I think all of you will love this. And I'll say, "Are you? Because I'm gonna go march in that parade with you, right? Are you sure? Because if you are," and he's like, "Grandma, I think you want me to be more gay more than I want to be gay." I'm like,
Maureen, could you please stop grooming your grandchild? I'm just saying. Um,
so I'm like so over the top, like, "No, really, I promise you, I've got rainbow stuff, and I'll be there with you." And but here's the question I think listeners have is, how do you know where the line is between I want my male energy Chuck and my female energy Savannah? Where is the distinction between those who decide I want to transgender, or I want to actually make the move to embrace this energy more than this energy? Is there a moment, or is there just a knowing, do you think, since you're young?
I have to ask you to reframe it because are we talking about just me personally, or are we talking about people in general who may move to transition?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I did not say that well. So
Okay.
that's my ADD getting ahead. My brain's ahead of my mouth, my my speech.
Ah,
So if you feel the need to express yourself as a woman, but you still embrace Chuck as well, is that what keeps you from transitioning?
oh, wow, what a way to put it because it doesn't keep me from anything.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
is about the exploration, kind of like your grandson, like exploring the feminine space and embodying that and embracing that. It took me freaking 40 some years to embrace me in a
Ah.
full way. Now, I still consider myself non-transitioning.
Mhm.
For me, I've always loved Chuck, but because Chuck exists, Chuck is my touchstone, is my biology, and I'm not looking to give up my biology to
Mhm.
become female, like medically, chemically, cosmetically. I will say this: if I woke up, I tell my girlfriend this all the time. I said, if I wake up tomorrow a woman, I'm like, I guess I'm like living the second half this way. It's like I would not be upset about it. Would I regret like not having an easier way to be masculine again,
Mhm.
especially with the biological parts and pieces that come with that? I probably would have some regret.
Mm.
So in that way, it does indicate and inform where I live on the spectrum of my gender or my dual genderness. Is like I'm kind of right there in the middle. Like I love being Chuck and I love being Savannah. And only thing is, I wish being Savannah took less time and effort, and I didn't have to put on so much padding and corsetry and make it work for my for who I am. But no, I mean I love Chuck. Chuck has a very easy time, I guess, if you want to say for nothing else, because Chuck is who I am. Chuck brings the money in. Chuck's the one who went to college. Chuck's done all this stuff. Chuck's led a full life. And Savannah, unfortunately, has led a very truncated adolescence. If you think about the number of hours spent as Savannah, it's probably less than a year of my total existence. But yet, Savannah is ingrained in my heart and in my mind, in the marrow of my being. It was just a matter of like finally come to terms that like she needs this. She needs an outlet. And so I have a very specific routine that's good for my girlfriend. So she doesn't need to worry about like me just all of a sudden showing up as Savannah. Typically on Sundays is my day, but with you, we made an exception. So I love this. And so yeah, it's just like having time. But like I could go 3 or 4 days at a conference, and by the time the next last day is done, I'm like, I'm done being Savannah. I just want to be Chuck for a while. So that
Ah,
also informs that a lot of people always feel wrong in their body.
right.
They always feel like they're a la phantom limb syndrome, but in like kind of reverse. It's like, why don't I have breast tissue? Or
Mhm.
what is this thing between my legs that I think is a foreign cancerous thing in my mind and when I think about it and the nervous system. Those are the people who are more likely to need a transition because they're very alienated from their own biology. So the only way
Mm.
to feel correct and right and content is to make those transitions to whatever degree that might be.
That was the most eloquently answered my debacle of a question, but that was the most eloquently answered answer I could have asked for. And I stand corrected, and I am always accountable when I said it keeps you from you. You answered that, so it doesn't keep you from anything. And you got exactly where I needed to go, which was how do you know when you really feel you're lacking in this one gender identity and you
Mhm.
really can't be your full self until you're in this other gender fully. And so beautiful the way you said it, and I love that you're comfortable in your wig, Savannah, and you're also comfortable in your skin, Chuck. And
Yes, yes.
I love that. What I also love is the fact that your girlfriend is so freaking amazing, and I'm gonna meet her one day because we're gonna be besties after this. But how cool was that? Was it something she knew from the beginning, or was it
Oh,
something that got discovered along the way?
oh no, I'm after I was married and subsequently divorced.
Mm.
That was the only adult relationship that did not know Savannah existed.
Oh.
But going forward, anytime I was in a relationship that it started becoming serious, that was one of the first things I would do is do the reveal, whether with a Polaroid picture, whether with a photo, whether with my phone. All depends on the technological age of when that relationship starts. So yes, my girlfriend at present, we've been together 9 years, and she is known from day one that, or I'm sorry, for the moment it was like, wow, this could be serious because we had known each other for a year prior to that. But as it was becoming more serious and we were like starting to turn that corner of like, ooh, this is going to become a relationship, intimate relationship, then it was like, hey, I need to show you something. And that something was Savannah in all her glory in that day and age. But my girlfriend didn't know anything about cross dressing. She'd seen Tootsie, she'd seen Rocky Horror, she knew what drag queens were, but she didn't. She's actually spoke about this recently on a podcast episode that's upcoming for our show. Is that she didn't have any understanding that a man who wanted to dress as a woman was just to be comfortable in their feminine energy. she also thought it was like performative. It was for comedy. It was for deceit. It was there was always another reason to do it other than like your personal happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. How fantastic is that? And I'm giving you a giant kudos because transparency and honesty is so important that you put everything on the line and said, I really care about this person and I really want a commitment with them and I need to be open and honest rather than hiding and being in the closet, quote unquote, about this any further, right?
Yes.
And I love that I'm sure she had questions, but it sounds like she loved you. I mean, if my
Yes.
husband had been hiding it, if he did this and he's been hiding it all these years, I'd be definitely upset more about the hiding part.
Yes.
So the fact that you were open about that and transparent, and I think that's a message to anyone who is transgender or anyone LGBTQ or cross dressing, anything, just be upfront and honest. And I tell this even with dating, straight heterosexual, um, nothing meant for you will ever miss you. And the right
Mhm.
person who is in front of you, anything that you share with them and you're vulnerable about yourself and your deepest, darkest needs and wants and desires, if it's meant for you, they will love you and embrace that. And so that's important to be transparent like you.
It is important, number one, because I'm too lazy to like be that covert all the time. And also I didn't want to live a life for myself where I could only get the sense of dressing if she wasn't around. I didn't want that in my life. I didn't want to be like so put myself in the closet just because I was too afraid to commit to transparency. Now that being said, and with a girlfriend who didn't know anything about the cross-dressing male to female experience, she had to learn what it was like. And I gave her all sorts of books to read, which apparently didn't do me any favors because they did not speak to the experience that I have gone through. They did not speak about a non transitioning male to female cross dressing experience. And because of that, I shot myself in the foot
Mm,
as a result because what she read, she took to heart. And so I had to dig myself out of those holes
yeah.
to my own chagrin. That's on me. But that's why I wrote the book that I wrote. The first book I wrote did exactly what you said. What happens if you're in a marriage for 25 years and your husband all of a sudden comes out and says, hey, there's this feminine side that you never knew about that I hid so well. And now there's trust issues. Now there's grieving the marriage you thought you had versus the marriage you now have. And what does that look like for me as a partner? Where do I go? I didn't sign up for this. It's like I didn't sign up to have a man who likes to dress as a woman. What about me? What about my needs? Like, how do I defend you to others? All
Yeah.
those things get wrapped up. And so my first book was all these stories about couples locally, just locally on Long Island when I wrote it and we lived there about these experiences and what they were going through. Some were very fresh after 40 years of marriage. Some were the one man met his girlfriend as his femme self, so he was worried how she would take his male self. So there was like all these dynamics, and while it was all about kind of that reveal, every situation was different and every reaction was different. Some wholeheartedly was like, I'm all on board, and then found out later, maybe not so much because they're so gung ho and I love my partner and this is perfect. But then like, ooh, I'm not sure how I feel because now I'm processing. Like grief processes differently, like how you understand and come to it, what you knew about it prior. All these things are at play. So it is not just like, oh, I'll just do this and it'll be fine. Because even my
Right.
girlfriend and I have been evolving over all these years. We go to couples counseling just to keep on beat and like stay tuned up and learn more about each other. Whereas I've never done that for myself. I never had therapy for Savannah because I did that deep dive over 40 years. But with a partner, it's different. You got to understand the nuances. As when totally endorse anybody in my situation with a partner, whether married or not. I think therapy is always a bonus and a plus.
I love it. I love it. And I'm a relationship coach and I embrace it all. So, you know what? Anybody can come to me and I definitely would help you through all of that. I think that's so fantastic. And what I was thinking as you were speaking was how do we tell our families? And I know that's the age old coming out question to our families and if someone wants to transition, I mean, that's a hard thing. And do we have to? Do we have to come out to our families if this is something that we don't feel will be embraced, or does that inhibit our freedom of expressing ourselves um in the other gender if we don't do that? Same as not
It's
expressing being gay, right?
right. It is all dependent. For me, it's easy enough to not tell anybody
Mhm.
because I have to tell people at work who I want to share Savannah with. And I said, hey, I'm going on this podcast tonight and I got to leave early so I can dress. Okay, LOL, boss. And I told my boss after working with him for 26 years. And I just told him this year because I felt like we finally got close enough that not telling him, I felt bad. Like,
Wow.
so the way I share with people is about how I feel about the relationship and whether I feel like I'm doing myself in the relationship a disservice by not sharing all of me. But also, it's hinged on what their worldview is. A lot of times, like my parents never knew. My father just passed away 3 months ago, age in his 80s, never ever told him. So the only way I could tell him was by writing a letter and burning it into ash to spread with his ashes. And that was how I processed, and that's how I told him and the great beyond at the same time that I wanted to share who I was with him, but I also knew that he was very, like you said for yourself, you knew what your parents' view of life is, and I knew they were very anti-queer, and to tell them would be to risk the relationship I had for like, oh yeah, they'll love me because they're my parents and they'll love their son. That wasn't a guarantee that they would love their son after I told them this. No matter how much accolades and work I've done in the community and doing all the right things, there was no guarantee. And I wasn't gonna take that risk. So I'd rather my mom, who's still alive, that she doesn't know. I would rather my father, I would have loved to have told him if I thought that he would be okay with it. But yeah, for me, it's a risk assessment. It is all about what are you doing it for you primarily? Like only for you, like I want to share with you, and then like not really care about how they feel about it.
Yeah.
So there's that. And I don't usually tend to go that route. I tend to go with like our relationship is at a point where I feel sharing this is enriching to the relationship and not just like, oh, guess what? Let me shock you. Yeah, it needs to be powerful in a way that's a positive for the relationship.
Oh my goodness. I love that so much because and I think that's kind of any vulnerability we have. Like Brene Brown says, people have to earn your vulnerability story, and that it took 26 years and then you were okay to share it with your boss because you reached that point, not telling mom, not telling dad. I think it's a betrayal, and I don't think it's being dishonest either. And I know that that would be the maybe the hot point that people would say, if you're so comfortable doing this, why don't you just share it with the world? Yeah, but you don't share your most deepest, darkest secrets about everything. If you do
Mhm.
drugs or you have an alcohol addiction or certain fetishes. Come on now. We don't share all of that stuff with
Right.
everybody. And so I think that's fair. I think that's such a perfect way of saying it. And I'm gonna write this down. It needs to be shared if it enriches the relationship. And that is so beautiful. And I think everything should be that way. Don't share anything, listeners. No vulnerability unless it enriches the relationship. Because you're right. It's not just for us to word vomit and trauma vomit and
Mm,
share vomit things just because we want to get it off of our chest. We do have
right.
to be cognizant of who's receiving it and how what their views are. It's something I teach in coaching too. Is we have to be more aware of how people receive information, not
Mhm.
just necessarily because it's communication, communication, communication. We're so focused on us and our self-centered way of how we communicate, but we need to be a little less self-involved and say, how do people around me receive information and what are
Yeah,
their views on the world, right?
absolutely. We hear the cliche of like, well, a secret shared is a secret halved. Yeah, but a secret shared is also now a burden on the other person.
Yes.
And when it comes to somebody like me, where sharing my secret doesn't allow that other person to have their own outlet to now process that outside of you, then you're not doing them a service either. So for me, when I told my girlfriend, my present girlfriend, I said, hey, listen, you share this with whoever you want to share this with. I give you full license because I've shared it with you. So I trust you with the information. I have to. That's why I shared it. So it's like I trust you enough to share this, but I also trust you enough to share it with whoever you need to share it with, whether for your own peace of mind, whether it ends up getting out in the wildfires and it goes beyond me, I have to be okay with that. And I've come to a point in my life where I am okay with that. Like when I did my first TEDx, and I
Yes.
spoke very emotionally about not telling my parents, but yet if they found this TEDx that somebody showed it to them and showed me, like, oh my God, that's your son, I would man up, quote unquote, to have that conversation. But I wasn't going to willingly do it unless it became a conversation. So
Wow, that is so beautiful. That's so beautiful that you took on that and said, I'm not going to put this burden on someone else. I'm going to put it out there and they're allowed to do whatever they need to do with it. And
mhm,
I will be okay with whatever the fallout is or
yeah.
whatever the joy of it is, the celebration of it is. Um, so I just love that so much. Um, oh, I just lost my train of thought. My thought process was, first of all, nobody can tell your story like you. And by you writing the book, I think it coming from your point of view, obviously there weren't books out there. You gave your girlfriend books to read and it backfired. So I always think sometimes it's bad that comes or always good that comes from bad, or we're moved to do something differently. Oh, here's my question. Do you feel treated differently when you're Savannah versus when, because this is the age old question. I know it's so cliche, but I had to. It's a Barbie, I'm a Barbie girl in a Barbie world right now. And that's what the Barbie movie is. And it's more than just pink. And have you seen the Barbie
I
movie?
have not. No, I know everybody's talking about doing the twofer, but
Please, 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 please go. Please go with Savannah because and what you're wearing now. It's beautiful. It's beautiful in so many ways because it talks of the struggle of women, but it also what I took away was how we demasculate men. And that's something I found I had done in my previous marriages. I did because the men that I was with were not masculine enough to step up to their obligations and I had no respect. And so then they became another one of my children. But I
mm,
found I own that. I own the accountability that I demasculated them because it's how I viewed them. And I should have just stopped the relationships and got out of it because they weren't going to change. And my view of them wasn't going to change. But I digress. I sidebar. So so, do you feel that you're treated differently? Do you see things differently as Savannah in out in the world, reactions, interactions?
well, I definitely act okay. Obviously, you and I had a conversation 2 weeks ago, Chuck and you, and the conversation was very much the same as it is now. So you will always get the same intellect, you always get the same kindness, the same heart, the same funniness as you did. So there's never going to be a difference in how I present myself emotionally, intellectually, you know, heartfelt. So that's always the same. Now, what does change is comportment, is how I carry myself as a woman. You take those different steps. You bring your body in a little tighter. You sway your hips a little bit more. You sit a certain way because, you're trying to keep a better posture. Chuck doesn't think about those things, but Chuck as Savannah thinks about those things all the time. This hair gets in my way. I have no peripheral vision because now I have hair where usually I do not. Um, but also I can walk out the door as Chuck, never think one word about my safety, never think one iota about what's going to happen to me in the world. But I would go out of Savannah and very much like any woman trying to get to the car in an empty parking lot after all the lights are out and when the mall closes. And imagine you rushing to your car with your keys in hand, worried that something may befall you. I feel that way as soon as I put these clothes on.
Wow.
So while you said earlier on, it's like you really can't understand my journey. but you can kind of empathize and sympathize about it. They're in some ways very akin. Whereas as a woman, you have things that you've been taught to have fear of or be aware of. As Savannah, I feel the same way, even though I'm still have the same muscles as a man as I do as Savannah. I do fear because not necessarily being a woman, but because I am a trans person. And because I'm a trans person, this is my armor. This is how I come into the world. So I better come correct. I better have my makeup on point. I better have the dress on, like just so. I make sure I go into the world looking as passable and unclockable as possible so that I can kind of skirt, no pun intended, skirt the things that may happen to me because somebody sees a trans person and they have some worldview issue about it. So
Oh my gosh. How Oh my, I'm speechless right now because I hadn't thought of that. I mean, not only the cross-dressing part of it, it's not like you just throw anything on and go out there because it's going to be so obvious and people will, there's hate out there. There's so much hate out there. But like you said, I have to work even extra hard to look as much like a woman as I possibly can, which is so like my heart hurts right now. Just all the work that goes into our appearances, our outside validations, and our fears of others' opinions and judgments and thoughts. And truly, my knowing as a medium and just as a human and as a spirit, we don't have genders of spirits. I don't know why, when we come into this human experience, that it's such a big factor. But I mean, it is
mhm.
learning. It obviously is a learning lesson for a reason. We're learning acceptance and love and compassion. But it's just, I had not thought about that at all. It's not like you're doing the performance drag queen thing where it's over the top. That's different. People look at that and laugh, and it's entertaining and it's fun. And we know they're just these big buoyant personalities trying to be noticed, and you're expressing your feminine side and trying to be sort of as unnoticed.
Yeah.
Oh, this is
How yeah, how to
mind
be big
blowing.
and yeah, how to be big and small at the same time. How to stand out in the world without being seen. It's a dichotomy. It's a mind blower. I always tell people that I feel like I have to be a 12 on a scale of 10 in order to feel like a 6. So I always put everything super on point as best I can. For the sake of that, I need this as my armor. This is my protection in a world that doesn't really fully endorse me yet. Now, will I feel if the world was different, would I put less effort in? Maybe. But I also have a very feminine iconology that I want to establish. Like I want to look a certain way. I want to present myself in a certain way. So I'm
Yeah.
not willing to shortcut that for just like, I'm just gonna go out in sweats and a big baggy shirt.
Yeah, because that's
No, no.
the whole point, is to show your feminine energy and
Yes.
to feel pretty and to feel softer. And
Yeah.
yeah, I totally get that. Where maybe I embrace my masculinity when I messy bun it and throw on a t-shirt.
And here I am looking at you going, you're the epitome of femininity. Like you already have naturally what I want to get to, like in like my contouring and my makeup and
Oh my
my
gosh.
body contouring and the padding. It's like you have that like at your fingertips as soon as you wake up in the morning. And this is something I have to put 90 minutes into look like this.
Oh my
So
god. Well, and then there's the pink tax, but we're not going to go into that because you see how expensive it is to be a woman, right?
yes. Yes, I understand about pink razor blades versus regular blue picks. I know.
It is ridiculous, and all the squeezing and the tucking and the moisturizing and oh my gosh, and the eyelashes, and yeah. That's why I think my masculine energy is so strong, because I'm like, I don't want to do all that. And I'm
But
just
you
trying
don't
to
have to. See, that is one major big difference is that you've lived as you 100% of your life. You've grown up, you had adolescence, you had your formative years, you are you. So, in a lot of times, for good or bad, we take that person for granted because we've lived that life. So, we don't like strive to elevate it every second of every day because you're in your body. You're comfortable in who you are. You don't need to elevate it because you are you. Whereas Chuck feels the same way. I don't need to elevate Chuck because Chuck has been living this life since birth. It's Savannah who needs protection, needs a proper presentation, needs to be safe in the world. All those things come into play regardless of how much time Chuck's put in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this is a whole nother podcast, but the ageism thing is a big thing too. You see yourself aging, and then there's more work to continue to look feminine, because you do tend to, like, as you age, you sort of get this masculine stuff going on.
Yeah, but see, men as they age get more feminine
Isn't that
because we
weird?
lose because so it works in my favor. I'm just gonna get softer with age, so it works out.
So you're saying I should not pluck my chin hairs anymore and just try to grow a beard?
I- If that's how you want to come up in the world, I'm all for it.
I so don't have
It'll
chin
be it'll
hair.
be it'll be like scratchy when I kiss you on the cheek, but I'm cool with that.
I know, because Savannah's coming to hang out with me in Austin, because we keep it weird here, and we're both pretty weird. So I just love it. So I love what you said, because the question that I always ask is, what do you know now that you never knew? And I love what you wrote. So tell me if you can remember it, or if you can.
I don't remember what I
Oh,
wrote. It's been months ago.
okay, I'm gonna read it, and then you
Okay.
can elaborate. So
Okay.
what you wrote is, I never knew that I could self-actualize my gender authenticity as both Chuck and Savannah without wholly relying on the strength and protection of others who would most certainly support me. At times, the idea of relying on my own bravery and confidence seemed out of reach, foolhardy, and impossible. But now I know I did have a well of confidence and self reliance that propels me ever forward into the public world. And I think that applies to every single one of us, regardless of gender and cross dressing and sexuality and where you are in life and financials. I think you said it so, so beautifully. So, what do you want to end us with? How do we get your books? How do we contact you? All the good stuff, and I'll have it in your podcast episode as well. But tell us where to find you. What if someone's in the closet and they want to reach out? Tell us how we can find you.
Well, you can find me. I mean, that whoever wrote that was amazing. I don't. I must have been possessed because I don't remember writing that. But that sounds so good. I'm gonna put that on my website. You can find me. I have a contact me on livingwithcrossdressing.com, so you can reach me through that form. Which some people, both crossdressers and their partners, have reached out to me that way. You can find me on Facebook at Savannah Hauk, and that's Hawk with a U, not a W. Also Instagram at Savannah Hauk. I also am on Facebook at Living with Crossdressing. Also the Fox and the Phoenix podcast, which also has an Instagram as well. You can find my books on Amazon or wherever you get your digital downloads. So you can get it in paperback. Both books are in paperback on Amazon, but you can get it also for just digital on Amazon and other places like Kobo and Apple Books and whatever, all the things. The podcast is on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts as well. What else can I tell? Oh, the TEDx's, just look for my name, Savannah Hauk, TEDx on YouTube, and you'll find those two are loaded there. One for Emory University in Atlanta and one for North Carolina State University. I love those. I was so happy to be a part of those projects. What else can I tell you? I hate plugging myself. Plugging myself is like the worst part of my thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
anybody who wants to get a hold of me can just get a hold of me through any of the social media channels. Just say that you found me through this show, and that way I'll know that you're coming with love in your heart and want for information, and I will help you any way I can.
Yes, listeners, make sure you mention I never knew, so he knows you're my friend, you're my people. Oh my gosh, so much good stuff. And yes, I'll have all of those links, and I need your books, and I want them signed by you. I think it's just absolutely fantastic that you're doing the brave work. And as I said before we started recording, that I feel like the things that we do in our life that is our purpose, and we find our purpose as humans, our ikigai, if you will, the Japanese philosophy of the thing that you know, the thing that you're passionate about, and the thing that you can make money at. It's the thing in the middle that is our purpose. And I feel when you finally understand that purpose and it's fulfilling for you, that when you share that and you pay that forward and you write a book and you get on a TEDx stage and podcast about things, it takes a lot of bravery to do that. And I think it's such a beautiful thing that you and all of the guests that have been on here, that we can get up there, put our vulnerabilities and our fears of being judged and criticized aside, to say I want to do it because I need to help one other person who's doing it. And as I always say, being the voice my younger self needed when I had no one. And when you were that young kid heading to New York, can you imagine having a TED talk to look at, or a book to read, or a mentor to say, hey, I got you here, hook
Yeah.
arms with me and let's go. That's what this is about. And I can't thank you enough for being you, both Savannah and Chuck. We get double trouble when it comes to you, and double light and double beauty. And I just think you're super, um, you're just such a light that is doing such good things in this world. And these are not topics that everybody talks about, and to be able to do this, what they call taboo topic, or um these things that we're, like you said, we're not quite where we need to be yet, but we're getting there because of you,
Oh,
and your bravery. And I love you to pieces, and I told you we're besties now, so
yes.
whether you like it or not, I'm gonna stalk you. No, just kidding.
No, you
But
can. I'm all about stalking. That's fine.
my
Because I need that validation.
my pretty and pink partner. So thank you for this hour that you just gifted to all of us listeners, to have a better understanding and more open-mindedness to accept one another in the world, and try better to understand it and not judge it. So thank you, my love.
Thank you so much. Sending love back.
Hang on with me. So guys, that'll do it for today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed Savannah as much as I did, and got some clarity and some understanding, and even some compassion and empathy and love, and just acceptance that let's just let everybody do them. Do you? Do you? So thank you all. I love you all for being here. I say this all the time, but it really is from the bottom of my heart. This is my passion, my purpose. If you need any life coaching, I do also a lot of LGBTQ coaching. So I'm going to add that in there. I'm a member of the LGBTQ neighborhood, and I am part of Pflugerville Pride here. I'm going to actually start volunteering in my town. But so if you need anything, you need help coming out, you need help accepting or understanding or just loving yourself, I'm with you at lifecoachmaureen.com. Don't forget my books on Amazon as well. I'm all about the puppies. So my dog is more enlightened than I am, and my dog is my relationship coach. And big surprise coming up, I have a third book in progress, just started publishing process. I can't wait to announce that one. Don't forget our puppy boutique, my dog is everything.net, where we have all homemade, holistic, healthy, homeopathic treats, paw bombs, soaps, and fun apparel and safety products for your puppies. I love you all. Until next week, take care of you, take care of each other. Most of all, take care of those furry babies. Please adopt and don't shop. And we'll see ya next week.